Hello, we're going to talk now about driving the energy transition with practical solutions. And we have a group of people on the panel with us who are very much involved in developing and promoting those practical solutions. Mohamed Abounayan, who's the chairman of Aqua Power, Olivier Lepouche, who's the CEO of SLB, Jeff Miller's right there from Halliburton, Amin Nasser, the president and CEO of Saudi Aramco, and Lorenzo Simonelli from Baker Hughes. So let me begin by asking Amin, what are the practical solutions? What's at the top of the list for you in terms of energy transition?
Well, what's top of the list is for sure, you just need to make sure, we always say you need to have an energy that is affordable, secure, and sustainable. So we need to ensure we meet all of these at the same time. So what we are doing right now is investing in renewable. We are investing in oil, we are investing in gas, we are decarbonizing, and we are doing all what it takes to ensure that we do as much decarbonization while we are ensuring that it is affordable at the end of the day and availing enough energy to the markets that we are operating in.
Right. Lorenzo?
I think it comes down to developing a sustainable energy development plan for the future. Takes into account everything that Amin said that Aramco is doing, and as Baker Hughes, from an energy technology perspective, we're there to make sure that we're focused on lowering emissions in existing operations, investing heavily into natural gas, which is not just a transition, but a destination fuel, liquefaction, and then also expanding the energy that's available to us, looking at new ways of CCUS, hydrogen, looking at continued advancements being made in nuclear, and so that we can expand the energy that's available to us.
Well, we'll come back to some of those topics, because that's quite a long list. Mohamed, you're approaching it from a different direction since you are in the renewable business.
Thank you very much. I think what, as Amin said, I think what makes it affordable is Aqua Power doing it. And really, I have to say that the whole world, we are very proud to say solar today, since we started, we have reduced the cost of producing, electricity from solar 90%. We have been able to reduce over 60% in wind. Storage today, we are almost 60%. And we made really the renewable, it become a base load. This is unprecedented in the whole world. We are not really producing renewable at the sunshine or when the wind is blowing.
And it's base load because of batteries?
Batteries and hydrogen. And the great thing that why I am very optimistic that Saudi Arabia will be the hub of the digital and the data center, because nobody in the world will be able to have net zero and base load as really this company has done in now more than 14 countries.
Thank you. Olivier?
We believe, and I think what we heard before, I think is the right approach. I think we believe in a balanced energy system for a balanced planet, as we call it. And I think we believe that three things will matter: efficiency, driving more efficiency for producing every energy source, decarbonization of every energy source and favoring the lowest carbon, and diversification. Diversification including new source of energy, new base load, hydrogen and other sources. So digital will play a role, CCS will play a role, and new source of energy will play a role, including critical minerals. So that's a balanced energy system for a balanced mix for the future.
And Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Look, I firmly believe that prosperity and available, affordable energy are the only two things perfectly correlated in this world. And today, the most affordable and available is oil and gas. And so when I think about the journey towards transition or decarbonization, I tend to think more like we do in safety in our business, which is we used to be relatively unsafe, and today we have moved to being very safe. And similarly in our industry, as we've set targets around lower emissions, we are making progress towards that and think we will continue to do that. For example, with electric frac fleets as an example that decarbonizes or lowers carbon in a big part of our business.
Right. So this is, of course, a Saudi-U.S. investment conference, and let me go back to Amin now and ask you, what are you looking at as an investor in the United States? And in particular, several have already mentioned, Lorenzo, natural gas, LNG. Is that on your agenda now?
Well, the U.S. is very strategic partners. We have, it's a big market, it's a stable market. We have the biggest refinery in the U.S. currently. One of the investment that we are signing today is an expansion on the refinery to make it more integrated with petrochemical. We're putting $3.4 billion in that refinery. We do have big investment in lubricants with Valvoline. And as you mentioned, the gas is a story in the U.S. The U.S. today, in terms of gas, is almost 100 billion of sales gas. And it is continuously increasing. So the gas is available. It's at a low cost. So we're looking at expanding in LNG. The U.S. is really a good place to put our investment. We are signing MOUs and investment today with Sempra next decades. That will avail about 6.2 million tons for us of LNG. We do have other investments. So we're looking at, by 2030, almost 7.5 million tons of LNG. But also, we're not only looking at LNG and gas technology. A lot of what we are signing was today had to do with technology. We do have a lot of investment in technology with our partners in NVIDIA and Google and IBM and Qualcomm. And these are important hubs for us to put investment. Most of our venture capital, which is about $7.5 billion, we deployed close to $2.5 billion of that. 63% of that deployment is in the U.S.
How big is your venture capital?
$7.5 billion. It's one of the biggest in the world. It's for startups and technologies and disruptive technologies. Most of the deployment is in the U.S., mainly because of the deep talents, because of the business environment, that is mainly the governance in the U.S., the leading universities. The ecosystem is great for putting large sum of that venture capital in the U.S.
Right.
And this is where we're deploying it.
Right. So Mohammed notes how the cost of solar has come down so dramatically with batteries, but also it seems to me that thinking about energy transition has changed a lot over the last 3 or 4 years. It used to be a linear notion of it. Now it's multidimensional, unfolding at different paces in different countries and different regions. And just would like to ask all of you how you think thinking about energy transition has changed from where it was, let's say, when the IEA did its net zero by 2050. And
I think, Dan, it's become more of a pragmatic, sensible discussion with the realities of a complex energy mix that needs to evolve to make it affordable, sustainable, and secure. And the discussions before didn't take into account where populations are increasing, didn't take into account the available resources today, didn't take into account how you make them economically and financially viable. And when you look at the energy mix, and you look at the history of the energy mix, it's evolved over decades. It doesn't happen in a day. And I think what you're seeing now is as the technologies get addressed, the new entrants come into play, the investments gets made, we're going to make progress. It's not that net zero is not out there. It's an aspect of a journey and making that journey viable, at the same time allowing prosperity in the world.
I want to give Mohammed a chance. Has your thinking changed?
No, because really what is really important and relevant, that we need to understand that the whole world need really some freedom. Affordability is extremely important. but also the specific of country needs, specific of country resources. You cannot say one fit all. And this is the issue in the past 3-4 years. Somebody is coming and telling the whole world what to do, how to do, what needed to be done. And regardless, the global north, with due respect, they are not looking at the global south, because reality, there is a huge gap between these two real different factors. So we need to be really more giving freedom. We need to countries to make their own decisions, and we need to let people use all resources, because reality, with this 7 billion people, with the growth of the population, people 2 billion, they did not have electricity, they did not have clean water. Now we have, AI, we have digitals. There is a lot of increase of energy. You have to give the countries and the people freedom to decide. And you need to have all of the energy to be used in a proper way, in a safe way. And we need to look at it affordability, affordability, affordability. Because the North, I'm sorry to say, the global North, they give lecture to the global South, because they have done in these hundreds of years and polluted the whole world. Now they want the global South to do nothing and just follow them.
And of course, there's a huge disparity. I think you've struck a responsive chord.
But I think that what we heard is correct. I think the approach that one size fits all, I think has been tested, has failed. I think everyone needs to recognize that every country has its own journey to its energy transition. Some of it would take 20 years, some of it would take 50 years.
Yes.
And I think having a mix of all energy source, being smart about the technology that can scale faster, the one that have to be waiting for another 10 or 20 years before the technical limits or the economics are not favorable yet. Some of it will require a little bit of support from regulation, from subsidies, so that it can scale, so that the demand is being supported. But at the end of the day, every country will have a different mix of energy source, and will have a different mix of carbon emission.
And that is a very big change from, as you said, the lectures from a few years ago, which said that everybody would have the same path.
Yeah, there was a hype, and then the hype has been met with reality. And the reality has been that not everything can scale at the same speed in every country. So everybody needs to readapt to the pace of the journey.
Jeff?
Look, I think that I'm not sure that my thinking has changed a lot, but I do think that, as you see, just like with any capital investment.
So what was your thinking?
My thinking was that it would be additive, if anything,
energy addition, not
economic.
Energy. Yeah.
But that targets would not be met, and so I think I think about it almost like capital investment. You can't invest capital in something that's low returning and then turn around later and decide to put it into something that's extraordinarily high returning. And in some markets, you can see where cost of energy is driving a lack of competitiveness. And I think that's a real risk. And so I think managing the cost is a serious point on any path that we're on. And so if the cost of energy goes way up because of a fast pivot or something else, there's a likelihood that market may become uncompetitive potentially forever.
Right. Well, so let me ask you all about the management of CO2, what we've learned about that, including what have we learned about what can be done with CO2 in terms of use or process. Amin, maybe start there.
Well, there's different uses for CO2. You can use it for enhanced oil recovery, and that you can capture underground almost 40% to 50%. And that is commercial, it's profitable. You can do what we are doing with Linde and Schlumberger in terms of a 9 million ton of carbon capture and storage, taking the CO2 from gas plants and sequestering it underground. Of course, that comes at a cost because there is no gain in terms except benefiting the environment in order for you to meet your aspiration for net zero for Scope 1 and Scope 2. And this is the most thing that we think with time, as we scale up, will be allowing us to reduce the cost of sequestering CO2 underground permanently. Of course, we are also at the same time looking at direct air capture. We are piloting it, putting a major big pilot plants in Dhahran right now with Siemens. This is very costly at this stage. Technology needs to transform and hopefully give us certain advantage over the long term. But today, if you look at the cost, just taking direct air capture and capturing CO2 from the air and then sequestering it, you're talking about maybe $600 per ton. You need to take that cost and bring it down. There is uses in certain products of CO2, but considering the amount of CO2 that we are producing, it's not really big. You can use it in certain elements, and we're looking at using it in cement and other products that we are doing. And hopefully that will give us some advantage with getting some gains out of that CO2 that we are producing. So we are working on all of these elements. We do have some for enhanced oil recovery, but the small plants. We are doing one, sequestering it permanently. We are looking at sequestering CO2 in basaltic rocks, so where it get with basalt and it solidify. Right. And we're looking at uses in cements and other products, in asphalts if possible, and all of these things over the long term. But we need to make sure it is commercial enough. And direct air capture is a long-term technology that we are working on. We did one pilot, we are doing another pilot. We think over the long term, that is a good solution if we can bring the cost to match the cost for sequestering it underground.
Does anybody want to add anything?
I have a little bit different view.
Okay.
Personally, CO2 capture and storage is not a solution. You know, it's very expensive. Many countries, they cannot afford it. And it's, I'm sorry to say, in California, they could afford it. But reality today, we need to be also realistic. Today, reality at the ground, it is not economical at all to have CO2 capture and store. And storing is not a solution. Reuse is a solution. And that's our partners here. USA, they are the best innovator. They are the best technology hub. This is what they are supposed to do. You know, it's really working in innovation, technology, development, to be able to really reuse without reusing the CO2 and making it for different application at competitive, at affordable. This is not going to be a solution. It's a luxury like anything else. And you could say that people could afford this luxury, only maybe few countries in the world. I could put it in my 5 fingers. Some of the Europeans, North America, maybe California, maybe other even...
Saudi Arabia.
You know, Saudi Arabia doesn't afford it, I'm telling you. I am not the responsible.
We have a difference of opinion here. Let me throw it to the jury and ask the 3 people from the companies to opine. You're the jury.
So let me add a couple of perspectives, because I think we are vested in CCS and CCU and CCUS for different reasons. The first is that I believe maybe that still there is a role for CCS and a capture to be long-term, addressing some hard-to-abate sector. I think this month we're about to commission for the first time, or next month, the first cement plant at scale, Breivik, okay, to decarbonize 400,000 tons of CO2.
How much the cost?
I think the cost will be recovered. It's the first one. You need to start somewhere and then scale.
Yes,
okay?
I agree.
So the second thing is there are some applications. We have just commercialized a capture application of a waste-to-energy plant that produce power, produce heat, and we capture the CO2,
Great.
and we use the CO2 in greenhouse for agriculture application. This is economic, because the waste-to-energy is efficient and has 3 applications that are sold to different industrials for this. So I think we find applications that are, and the cost of capture will go down. I'm not talking about direct capture, I'm talking about process by learning and scaling and doing it from waste to energy, power, and some other application hard to abate, because this is the only solution for hard to abate sector.
So Jeff and Lorenzo, where do you come out in this debate?
Look, I view it as a way to minimize emissions, but it does come at a cost. I think we'll get better at doing that. I know we do a fairly large business in CCUS today, and that cost curve continues to come down. But under almost any circumstances, unless we find effective uses for CO2, it will be a burden on the cost of energy.
We've got to go back to the basics of chemistry and the molecule. And today, 97% pure CO2 has a value on the marketplace. The circular economy is what we've got to evolve into, which is how do we make sure we're bringing economically, financially viable solutions to the energy mix of the future. Ultimately, just storing something in the ground is a cost and a burden. Doing something with it is going to provide value and provide that circular economy.
Yeah.
Carbon black, CO2 in cement, CO2 in other applications. I think as we advance, and that's the technologies we're talking about, we will get to an aspect of being able to have more value from CO2.
So Amin, I think we got to go back to you now to give you, after you've heard these points of view.
You know, as I said, we need to scale in order to reduce the cost. If you look at the cost of CO2 per ton in the kingdom, it's one of the lowest costs in terms of that. It's at $85. If you look at doing blue hydrogen, you need to sequester the CO2. Otherwise, you cannot produce blue hydrogen. And for us, when we looked at sequestering CO2 under the ground, producing blue hydrogen, putting it in certain market, we are the lowest cost compared to any market in the globe. So there are certain countries that they would like these solutions. They do have a lot of incentive. We cannot stop them from giving the incentive. They have the markets. And as long as they are willing to pay for it, we will be more than happy to provide it. So we have a great geology for sequestering CO2 in the kingdom. It's the lowest cost. And we do have enough underground to sequester all the kingdom requirement and more when it comes to CO2. So there are customers, as I said, as we build up in our blue hydrogens in the future, and there will be a time that blue hydrogen and green hydrogen will scale up. The cost will also go down. You need to scale. If you don't scale, this is what's the problem with today? Why is the $85? Because we don't have many projects in CO2 sequestration. We need to have scaling. We need to have many projects around the world. Then economy of scale will work out. Your cost will go down, and then you can avail more products. And if there is uses for the CO2 at a more competitive advantage than sequestering, will be great. But ultimately, we do have a strategy. We need to, for example, for Saudi Aramco, our strategy is to have 0 when it comes to scope 1 and scope 2. And we are using efficiency improvement. We are using CO2 sequestration. We are looking at different elements, renewables, to offset our scope 2 because it helps us a lot. That's why we are also on renewable. All of these work together until you achieve your ultimate goal. So we are also working on cement, as Olivier mentioned. It's a big thing for us to look at how much of that CO2 we can use in cement and use it in application. All of these, you need to work in many directions until you reach the stage where it is optimum in terms of cost.
So Mohammed, are you convinced now?
Wallahi, I cannot, as you know, argue with Amin.
Well, you can, but only up to a
Amin
point.
will have the wisdom, have a better argument than myself. But what I'm saying, that we are happy with the President Trump administration, because this is the administration, at least they come to reality. And reality, that fossil fuel, we need it forever. But we need renewable, we need green energy, we need combination. We need to look at it economics, sustainability, security. And reality today, you know, we not want people to lecture us as it has happened in the past, what wrong, what right. You know, we need to be, each country has to decide by its own, and no country will come and force you to do something because they have certain ideas or certain mindset that they want to impose it.
Well, let me take one idea that was very prevalent 3 or 4 years ago. You've already mentioned it, and this has to do with timing, that the hopes for hydrogen of a few years ago have not reached the scale that had been expected. Is the problem supply or is the problem demand?
For me, it's very clear. I'm telling you, I believe in creating demand. It's not going to be easy for hydrogen. What you do, as Amin said and some of my colleagues, you need to produce at large scale and create demand by supply at competitiveness. Look at it in green hydrogen. It is 50% lower than any country could produce in the whole world.
Right.
Why? Because we have the competitive edge of Saudi Arabia, scale, renewable resources, you know, finance cost, all of the above. And also, you know, we are producing. Now we have an offtake of 30 years.
Right.
Why? Because we have been able to reduce the cost of green hydrogen 50%.
But let me ask Amin, you've spoken in the past about the problem of demand. Is that the market?
We spoke about it in the past that we don't think this demand will materialize because the number that was shown by consulting agencies and others that shows a huge demand for green and blue.
Those people from the north.
And some in the south, 1 or 2. But the bottom line, ultimately, and they thought the cost will go down drastically from $4 per kilogram to $1 per kilogram. None of that materialized. Supply is available. You want, as Mohammed said, you want green hydrogen, it's available. You want blue hydrogen, it's available. But we are not going to start constructing these projects until we get the offtake. And the price is known because we did the engineering and we did the bidding and we know how much it will cost us to build these projects. But we need the offtake. So we have been into different markets asking for offtake. Offtake is not materializing as of yet because the cost is high. At the end of the day, it's a $200, as I said. I always say it's 200 and 400.
Right.
And I need an offtake not for 1 year. I need an offtake for 20 years. So when they looked at their numbers, they reduced the amount of requirements significantly.
Right. Well, let me thank you all for not only discussing the practical solutions for energy transition, but very much the practical thinking for energy transition. Please join me in thanking our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.